from Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. Ahead today, K-State's Curt Thompson will look at what research says about the impact of tillage on weed proliferation in crop fields. He spoke on that topic at a recent K-State Field Day, which focused on tillage as an alternative for controlling herbicide-resistant weed populations. Today's Wheat Harvest Update features Extension Agricultural Agents Darren Busick of Reno County and Chris Long of the Walnut Creek Extension District. Later, from the Farm Service Agency, Bob White will provide an update on USDA Farm Loan availability. And on this week's K-State Horticulture segment, Raymond Cloyd discusses control of several more lawn and garden insects. That's our lineup on this Agriculture Today.
While many people know hunger is an issue in developing countries, it is also a problem in our own backyards. In 2010, 1 in 7 Kansans struggled to put adequate food on the table. 2 K-State research and extension programs are tackling this problem. The Family Nutrition Program and Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program reach thousands of Kansans in more than 70 counties. They learn how to eat healthy with a low budget. For more information about these programs, visit ksre.ksu.edu.
You're listening to Agriculture Today. Welcome once again. Going to draw now from information that was passed along to producers at a well-attended Tillage Field Day that K-State Research and Extension hosted last week in Garden City. And the main topic here is the effects of field tillage on weed control. And along with us once again is weed management specialist Curt Thompson of K-State Research and Extension. He was on that program in Garden City a few days back. So, Curt, just gauging this, why the interest, again, in tillage as an alternative to purely no-till systems?
Well, one of the things we actually did talk about was why till, and clearly in the last few years we've seen a pretty large increase of glyphosate-resistant weeds, and so especially in those scenarios where we were using glyphosate to substitute for tillage in some of our no-till systems, glyphosate no longer working, there's a few more folks that have had to resort or have decided to resort to tillage. We have some annual weeds, primarily kochia and Palmer amaranth, in some cases mare's tail, that glyphosate's no longer killing. It used to. All right. But we've also seen over the years in systems where people have gone completely no-till that we have some warm season perennials that tend to establish things like tumble windmill grass. There is tumble grass. Some of our warm season pasture grasses have actually migrated into some of our no-till fields, and all of those species tend to be very difficult to control with glyphosate, and so a good undercutting on a hot day can be very effective at managing any of those types of weeds.
Your mission at this field day, though, was to pass along some facts about tillage and the impact on weed populations. There are several facets to this, correct?
There are, and we kind of went through a list of myths as well as some facts. Some of the myths that I hit on briefly were the control of perennial weeds. I mean, I've heard more than once bindweed or burr ragweed. The only way you can really kill those things is to work them down, and that isn't really true. We can get rid of the tops, but of course they come back, and we don't get effective control with tillage. We also brought up the fact that even some of our annual weeds, I also hear that we don't have resistance to steel, but Mother Nature does have to cooperate. Now, the last couple of weeks, Mother Nature's been cooperating all too well.
Right.
Hot, dry, breezy weather in combination with tillage is very effective at controlling these annual weeds. But I saw last summer, with all the rainfall we had out west, a lot of Palmer amaranth that couldn't be killed with tillage. So, there has to be that understanding that tillage is effective when we get cooperation from Mother Nature. And, we're currently experiencing that type of cooperation, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, I get this statement, we can't afford all the herbicides, and tillage can reduce the amount of herbicides that we need in crop. And I don't agree. We still need good herbicide programs in crop, whether we're in a no-till or a conventionally tilled system, and the herbicide requirement in crop is going to be similar. What we do save is, of course, the herbicide use during the either fallow or seedbed preparation. The other myth, and I guess in some respects it may have been true back in the moldboard plow days, but to bury seed below the germination depth, you can eliminate that species. Well, that's true if you only till once. But the next time you come back and till, if you're even moldboard plowing, we used to turn those weed seeds back up, and so we always had a good weed population.
You stir them up once again.
You bet.
And we'll come back to that point for there's further research information on particular weed responses to tillage. Curt, you spoke about pigweed emergence and how tillage would affect that weed in specific, and moreover, seed distribution of pigweed in the soil.
One of the factors about tillage is that we do distribute weed seed into the soil at whatever depth we're working the ground. I didn't say uniformly, okay? But if you work ground 6 inches deep, you'll have some seed distributed to that depth of 6 inches. Now, when we talk about small seed and large seed, large seed laying on the surface sometimes can have a difficult time getting enough moisture for germination and establishment. If we work that into the profile, we increase our seed-to-soil contact, assuring that large seed comes up. So, in fact, tillage can benefit some of the large-seeded weeds. With Palmer amaranth or some of our pigweed species, if we turn those into the soil, those in the shallow portion of the soil profile will germinate and emerge. Anything that's buried deeper may lie there until it's tilled back up near the surface so that it can germinate and emerge.
So a one-pass tillage operation might be beneficial.
It's possible.
But there are some caveats to that. You went ahead and shared information from other research on the viability of seed in the soil over time with tillage being involved here. And what did that work have to say? It was out of Nebraska?
Yeah, it was out of Nebraska several years ago, but it kind of follows up with what we just talked about burying seed. And so this was an experiment that weed scientists have used time and time again over the last several years to look at a number of different species and what the impact is of laying that weed seed in there at about 8 inches deep. And so we come to realize that it really does differ by weed species. Things like kochia or Russian thistle laid in 8 inches deep, we know that the viability of that seed is very short-lived, and so you get out 1, 2, 3 years, there's very little of that seed that remains viable. And so if you were to turn that seed back up 5 or 10 years later, it probably isn't going to grow. Mm-hmm. Some of the other weed species, good old sandbur, they had trouble getting sandbur to grow. 30% germination before they actually put anything in the ground. But in fact, that sandburr continued to linger, and even 17 years later, they still had 1 and 2% germination. So that suggests that getting rid of sandburr completely is a difficult task. A couple of other species, good old puncture vine, little like sandburr, continues to hang on and provide a low level all the way out to about 17 years. One of the weed species that was almost scary is velvet leaf. We saw a better germination rate from 100 seeds buried 8 inches deep 17 years later than they got the initial germination of the seed the day they buried it. So you moldboard plow velvet leaf down 8 inches deep, that just means that you'll have velvet leaf seed probably for the duration of your career.
So, Curt, taking all of that collectively, there may be some mixed signals here. So what is the take-home about tillage as a substitute for no-till when you have challenging weed problems?
If there's an alternative to tillage and you can successfully do it with herbicides, my recommendation would be not to till. But if you are going to lose a crop, if you don't till to manage our annual weeds, then the grower has to make that call.
But your hope is that producers will give this due contemplation before they make a quantum shift in how they go about their cropping business.
I would completely agree with that statement, Eric.
Yeah. Interesting information, once again passed along at the Tillage Field Day hosted by K-State earlier this month. Curt, thanks for the overview of all of this, and we'll have you back soon.
Always a pleasure, Eric.
He is a weed management specialist, K-State Research and Extension, and once more remarking on the effects of tillage on weed populations. Curt Thompson with us on this Agriculture Today. We'll have more for you in a few moments on the K-State Radio Network.
What is radon? Home exposure to radon gas is the leading cause of lung cancer death in the United States for non-smokers. In Kansas, 1 in 4 homes will test at or above the EPA action level. The Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested and fixed if necessary. Visit kansasradonprogram.org for more information. Test, fix, save a life. This message brought to you by the Kansas Radon Program, the Kansas Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
Agriculture Today is back now on the K-State Radio Network, and we're around to today's edition of the Wheat Harvest Update. As you know, we're turning to Extension District and County agricultural agents around Kansas for input on harvest progress in their respective locations. Today, we hear about how harvest has been going and how close it is to completion in Reno County, south central Kansas. Agent Darren Busick with us to fill us in. Darren, a little rainfall this week has slowed your harvest progress, it sounds.
Yeah, we had pretty widespread rain that went through the county.
But your producers, you say, will take it, given how dry it's been.
Yeah, as dry as we've been down here and the way the wheat's been, I think most everybody would be all right with some rain for their fall crops.
Well, ahead of the rains, how far along was cutting in Reno County?
I would say we were really close to probably 50 or 60% done in Reno County. Yeah, it was moving at a pretty fast pace. I'd say we'd been cutting for about a week and a half down here.
And looking back this past spring, heading into May and June, what were the general expectations for the wheat crop in your county?
Yeah, I had a field day on May 21st, I believe, and it was still green. And then by May 26th, I believe it was pretty much white and dead. I mean, there was places where it just died within about a 3-day period because of that heat that we had come in and the dry conditions we've had. You know, before, when we had our field day, I mean, we were expecting, 30. I thought if we averaged 30, that'd be a pretty good yield. And then, test weights, I was hoping, of course, up around 59, 60. But after that dry conditions came in and the heat and everything, I kind of thought, I don't know, I was afraid we might not even get to 20 average. But what I've been hearing, it's been a little bit better than that. It's been probably right around 25, 30 is what I'd say the average is. I've heard some where they were in the low teens, 13 yield, something like that. But I've also heard some that have been, 45. So again, it was real dependent on the rains. We had some scattered rains that really helped things out. Timely rains when they really needed it during filling and stuff like that. But for the majority, our whole county missed most of those rains.
The test weights, did they end up holding up, or did they fade a bit too?
They did. There was some really low test weights that I've heard. I mean, anywhere from probably 55 all the way up to 59. I would say overall for the county, I'd say a good average would be probably 58 to the high 59s for a test weight, which is better than what we were expecting. We had Romeo down for my field day, and after that, we talked a couple times afterwards, and with that dry heat and that the hot temperatures and everything and drought, I mean, we were expecting a lot more shriveled heads than what we had, or shriveled seeds.
And with low yields, often we'll see, coupled with that, higher protein contents. Are you hearing any word about that?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything really unusual, I guess. I mean, it's been, I'd say, just kind of an average protein, maybe just a little bit higher, but we kind of thought it'd be higher too, and it actually is a little bit lower than what I was expecting. I think with having the little bit higher yields and higher test weights than what I expected, I think that kind of kept the protein down just a little bit of what I was expecting.
So it's been a less than stellar year for wheat production in Reno County. That said, Darren, any particular varieties that you've seen in your plots or are hearing about that have borne up a little better than the others in these generally substandard growing conditions?
Yeah, I don't have all my data back from my plots quite yet, but I do know Zinda, I think, did pretty well down here. That was one of them that did well in our plots this year. I had two locations for our yield plots, and one was up by Nickerson and one was down by Haven. And the Haven one did actually pretty well. It had some really good test weights and some decent yields for this year. The one up at Nickerson, it just kind of missed some rains, I think, that Haven might have gotten, and it wasn't quite as good. I think it averaged about 20, 25, but Zinda did pretty good at both of them. It really did.
Well, summarizing it was not a great year for wheat production, and your producers are moving on with their row crops.
Yep. We've had a couple really good years down here with wheat, and this year was kind of back down to about average, I'd say.
Darren, thanks for the quick notes on harvest in your county. We'll talk again soon.
Yep, thank you.
Darren Busick with us. He is the Reno County Extension Agricultural Agent. And now we hear about harvest and how things are moving along in the Walnut Creek Extension District, which is comprised of Lane, Ness, and Rush counties in the west central part of the state. Chris Long is the Extension Agricultural Agent there, and you have three counties that you keep tabs on that typically, Chris, are pretty prolific in wheat production. So when this harvest began, what were you thinking in terms of the likely productivity of this crop?
Well, we had our doubts, so we were a little skeptical on how things would turn out this year, just due to a lot of the major drought conditions that we were facing. Didn't have a lot of significant moisture throughout the winter, pretty low amounts of snow, as a lot of folks in the western part of the state have probably dealt with this year. So pretty low on moisture, so we were dealing with a lot of short wheat and thin stands, and so we were a little pessimistic as to what we were going to be seeing this harvest.
And you have seen some cutting in your area now, correct?
That's right. The first recorded load, I believe, of the district came in on as early as Monday the 11th, so a little over a week ago, but that was, and surprisingly, it was pretty dry. It was, I think, upper 11 on moisture, but that was a single load for several days, so I was kind of surprised it was from the northern part of Rush County, but that was kind of the early start, and that's pretty early for our part of the country.
Did you see some harvesting as well in the western end of the district then in Lane County?
Yeah, we sure did. We started in Lane County. They started getting a few loads in around the 15th or 16th and on into Father's Day weekend. That's really when things started to slowly increase. We haven't seen a huge influx yet, but just kind of a slow and steady go all the way across the district now. As far as harvest goes, Rush County really started getting a little heavier around the 15th and the 14th even, and Ness County as well started taking a few more loads in on the 15th, and they were really getting things started to pick up district-wide. Even the northern part of Lane County was picking up a little bit more over the weekend and taking a few more loads on through Tuesday until the rains decided to make their way through this part of the state.
Now, the bar was set somewhat low for this crop going in. What sorts of yields and test weights have resulted so far?
Well, so far, it's been surprising for the most part. Quality has been fairly well. We've seen a lot of test weights. Rush County has seen a lot of test weights well above 60, anywhere from 60 to 64. I think one of the lowest ones that I had heard was maybe even about 59, which is kind of surprising. We were looking at the crop, not expecting much, but the quality's been there. Protein levels have been really good, anywhere from 12 on up to 14. And then on into Ness County was about the same way. A lot of test weights in the 60s. Lane County was the same way. A lot of test weights in the 60s. Yields were a little bit surprising in the eastern part of the district. Rush County, we've seen a lot in the 40s. We've seen quite a bit in the 30s, of course, as well, and then some in the 20s. So that's been somewhat of a welcome surprise. Lane County, nothing, yield-wise, I haven't heard a ton of numbers yet just because they're still getting going over there. But some of the earlier reports is about as is expected over there. They dealt with a lot more drought issues. They had some fields that were pretty much wiped out this spring because of the drought. And then they also had that big hailstorm that really came through in May and really wiped out a large number of acres. So, our acres out there are going to be down considerably. Ness County got in on some of that hail as well and lost quite a few acres south of Ness City. And so it's the numbers a little bit, as far as yield, a little bit better than expected, but still down. When you've been harvesting 60 to 80 bushel wheat for 2 years in a row, anything lower than that's going to be a pretty large drop-off, and that's really what we're seeing this year.
Acknowledging that, have you spotted any particular varieties that have stood up fairly decently amidst these less than ideal conditions?
Yeah, Grainfield. There's several guys that have been planting Grainfield for a couple of years now, and they still are sticking with it, and they've been pretty happy with it. We've also had a couple guys in Rush County that have also talked about SY Monument, which hasn't always had the best track record in western Kansas, but so far in Rush County, there's been a couple guys that have been pleased with it, and we'll see some TAM 114. I know guys that are pretty high on 114 out in this part, and then we've still got a few of the guys that are hanging on to some of the varieties that have been around for a few years, like T158 or something along those lines. But those have been some of them that have stood out this year so far.
Chris, thanks for the update, as always.
You bet. I appreciate the call.
That's Chris Long. He's the Extension Agricultural Agent specializing in crop production for the Walnut Creek Extension District. Once again, that is Lane, Ness, and Rush counties in west central Kansas. That is today's Kansas Wheat Harvest Update for you here on Agriculture Today.
Did you know every Kansas farmer feeds 128 plus people?
Kansas farmers are hard workers, dependable, authentic, and sensitive.
Not only do farmers put food on your table, but they put clothes on your back and fuel in your car.
For more information about Kansas farmers, visit K-State Research and Extension online or stop by your local Extension office. This message has been brought to you by the K-State Animal Sciences Leadership Academy participants.
Welcome back. You're tuned to Agriculture Today. We have Mike Side now from the Farm Service Agency, state headquarters for Kansas, the Farm Loan Chief with the Kansas FSA, Bob White. For The time is ripe for many a producer out there to take full advantage of the USDA Farm Loan Program, and we'll venture into why that might be in just a moment and go over the options available to you producers. But Bob, once again, this conversation largely is stemming from our difficult conditions in farming and ranching right now, economically, and regarding the weather, likewise.
Certainly, Eric. Good to be here and visit with you about Farm Service Agency and all the good that our customers are doing out there. Things are changing constantly in agriculture, as we know, and certainly we've got interesting times going on right now. As your listeners, I'm sure, are very aware, much of Kansas is experiencing some pretty extreme to moderate drought conditions. That's been ongoing for quite a while, and these conditions certainly impact an agriculture sector. As we know, the wheat crop we're presently harvesting, spring crops are showing a lot of stress. Livestock operations are concerned about pastures, ponds, hay supplies. So these issues are really showing up really on all of farm operations and really impacting our customers. And kind of wanted to visit with you about some options we might have available to assist those customers.
You note that despite all of this going on that's rather adverse to the producer, your Farm Service Agency loan holders have done a pretty decent job of managing through these situations.
Well, to this point, our customers just have done an amazing job. We're so impressed with how our customers have kind of pulled through these difficult economic times. Kind of some figures to support that. Currently, our direct loan portfolio, we have a delinquency rate of 5.4%, and that's actually down from 5.5% last year. So we're just slightly down from our delinquency rate just a year ago. And our guaranteed loan portfolio, likewise, we're at 3.7% compared to 3.9% last year. So we're really managing through what we've had up to this point in the farm crisis very, very well. We're very impressed. We're just trying to keep a close eye on the weather conditions, drought conditions we've got going forward and seeing how things may go from here.
That considered, you want producers that may have FSA loans intact right now to be aware of some alternatives that they could consider if times get a little tighter and a little tougher.
Yes. What we'd suggest is customers try to take a look at their cash flow situation, what kind of impact, if any, they may be having from the weather conditions. And if they're direct loan borrowers, we recommend they contact our office. We've got some options that we can consider for existing loans. One of those options would be our disaster set-aside program. Under that program, we'd take the portion of the payment that they're unable to make and work with the borrower to move that to the backside of the note, basically to the maturity date of the note, and put that payment off till then due to a disaster kind of drought situation. Another option we've got is we can take a look at rescheduling or reamortization of a present loan. That basically amounts to rewriting, restructuring that balance over the remaining term of the loan. In some cases, we can extend that term, extend that maturity date out a little bit more, and give some more cash flow relief.
So there's some latitude here and flexibility, and it's a matter of those borrowers visiting with their FSA loan officer.
Absolutely. We want to work closely with our customers and do that, and every operation is unique, and a lot of these servicing options are cash flow based. Kind of depends on what the cash flow needs are. We try to tailor each case to where the need is.
That was for the direct loans, the guaranteed loans under the FSA program. Some of this latitude might apply as well?
Absolutely. Of course, under the guaranteed loan program, we provide a guarantee to a commercial lender who provides that financing. And so the customers need to work with their commercial lenders. And again, if they anticipate some challenges meeting their scheduled payments, we recommend guaranteed loan customers visit with those lenders, check into those possibilities. They have options available to them under our guaranteed program, very similar to what we offer in our direct loan program.
That's for current FSA borrowers, the USDA loan program. For those who have not participated in this program before, but find that they may need to pursue it, they can look into the options here. You might get into that a bit, Bob.
Certainly. For someone who's not an existing customer, again, we recommend individuals take a look at their debt repayment structure, their ability to meet those payment obligations. In some cases, customers have or anticipate having some carryover debt obligations, maybe some restructuring of that type of debt needs to be looked at. For the customers that think that there may be the need to do that, we'd encourage customers to start with the commercial lender they're working with, check into the availability of a guaranteed loan there. Welcome as well to visit with one of our farm loan sites around the state. Check into what our programs offer and how they may fit. Again, as I mentioned earlier, every operation is unique, and we want to tailor debt structure that's going to be most applicable and most convenient and most workable for each individual. As far as loan-making activity, at this time of the year, we often receive questions about our financing, whether we have adequate funding. Right. Our loan-making activity has been quite active. Actually, we're just coming off of two record-breaking years as far as volume of loan activity here in the state, and we're close to that activity where we were the last couple of years. So a lot of constant activity. Kind of a perspective on that, we kind of throw around some big numbers sometimes. I have to break that down into slightly smaller numbers just to understand it, get my hands around it myself. But for every working day, we've been lending about $1 million through a Director Guaranteed Loan Program. We just passed $1 billion in our total loan portfolio. So certainly a significant amount of volume, significant amount of assistance around the state. But the good news is that even though we've loaned out a substantial amount, it does look like our funding situation is very positive for the balance of this fiscal year through September 30. We don't anticipate any funding shortages, or if we do, we think it'll be very late in the fiscal year. So we do hope to be able to provide that type of assistance through the end of the fiscal year.
Well, Bob, once more, any questions on any of this can be addressed and answered at that local FSA counter, correct?
Absolutely. That's a point of first contact, and we're very fortunate to have great staff out here in the field and that really care about our customers that we serve. And I'm sure that if people have questions, they'll obtain very good answers. Just contact any of the Farm Service Agency offices, and if they don't have the assistance there at that immediate office, they can certainly refer customers to the point they need to make that inquiry.
Bob, always a pleasure. Thank you for coming over.
Thank you, Eric.
He's the Farm Loan Chief for the Farm Service Agency here in Kansas. That's Bob White on this part of Agriculture Today. We'll return with more in a few moments on this, the K-State Radio Network. For 25 years, K-State Research and Extension's Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services has been providing a no-cost, confidential place to call in and visit with an agricultural lawyer. Our experts are available to help you producers handle legal and financial issues. Explore your options and generate solutions. Call us at 800-321-3276 or visit us online. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. Rounding out this Agriculture Today, it's once more time for our weekly K-State Horticulture segment, and we've invited back in Raymond Cloyd, horticultural entomologist, K-State Research and Extension, to cover what's going on in lawn and garden, insect-wise, and what, if anything, to do in response as homeowners and gardeners. We want to venture into several new pests, at least for this go-round, that we've not talked of so far this season, Raymond, but a couple of reminders about existing problems we've touched upon and bring us up to date on two things: spider mites and bagworms. They remain active, right?
They do, Eric. With the weather we're having, it's just very conducive for the two-spotted spider mite in terms of their life cycle and reproduction. The dry, lack of moisture conditions, the plants are somewhat under some stress. Just really great for two-spotted spider mites to thrive, and they attack a horde of ornamental crops and vegetable crops, tomatoes, typically this time of year. And so what do? Well, the first thing, if you can, is a forceful water spray will dislodge them right away, and they generally won't come back. There are some horticultural oils and insecticidal soaps that we recommend. However, you want to make sure you water your plants the night before because you don't want them undergoing water stress and getting burned from the especially from the oil applications. Now, the soaps and oils are contact, so you have to get thorough coverage of all plant parts, and two-spotted spider mites tends to be on the leaf undersides. So you really have to do a diligent job in your thorough coverage, especially in larger plants, if you really want to suppress populations of two-spotted spider mites and avoid the damage they cause to plants.
And one shot will take care of them as far as a treatment, if necessary, that is?
Probably not, Eric. Most of the materials are not going to work on the eggs, except the oils. So it's going to take, like most insects and mites, multiple applications, probably once a week. Apply it in the early morning before it gets really hot. Mm-hmm. That way your material won't dissipate through volatilization. It'll last a little bit longer, or in the evening if you're not worried about disease outbreaks occurring. But yeah, it's going to take some diligence in multiple applications. And the force of water sprays are very good because they don't disrupt the natural enemies of spider mites and other insect pests that are out there. So that's why we sort of go with those first.
And due diligence applies with bagworm control. Likewise, we've talked about the time to put on the first treatment a couple of weeks ago, and now following up on a routine basis, right?
Absolutely, Eric. They should be stopped ballooning in. Ballooning means they come in from miles away, getting caught in wind currents, and they're small. And right now, the best material is the dipel, is a trade name for what we call Bacillus thuringiensis karostaki. It's a material of bacteria that only kills caterpillars. That's why we like it. It's a selective material. But it only kills the young ones. So as they get bigger throughout the year, you have to use something with a spinosad as the active ingredient I mentioned before. And then later on, you have to use something like a pyrethroid insecticide, the bifenthrin, things like that. So if you really get on the dipel, and of course, hand picking is still effective. I mean, getting out there when they're small is easy. Because remember, later on in the year, the females will die, and each of those bags can contain between 500 and 1,000 eggs. That's how they overwinter. Right. So getting on early, and they just don't attack junipers and thuya. They will attack a wide range of broadleaf plants. We keep getting inquiries or people telling us they're feeding on other plants we never thought they would, roses and honey locusts and dogwoods, things we never thought they would feed on before.
They are relentless bagworms, so stay on top of them for full control. Well, hot weather normally, Raymond, begets grasshopper activity, and that's what's going on out there, you say?
Yeah, we're getting inquiries. Grasshoppers, of course, very migratory. The adults fly, and they come in, and they feed on a wide range of weeds and a wide range of vegetables and ornamental plants. And it's really hard to deal with them because of this migratory behavior. Sprays are less effective, I should say, because the adults have this very waxy skin or cuticle, which prevents the insecticide from staying on them. You might have to add a surfactant, but it takes diligence. Now, people have heard of this. It's called Nosema lecketzi. It's a protozoa that only kills grasshoppers, but it has to be used in a wide range area. It can't be used in isolated locations. I mean, many nurseries sell it as nolobate or semaspore. But if everybody in Riley County did it, it might work, but it may not. It's probably not going to happen, yeah.
If you're battling grasshoppers in an isolated circumstance, say a vegetable garden, common insecticides will help or not?
It really depends what you use. 7 is probably widely used as a malathion and others. The overwinter the eggs in the ground that come out. But again, you have to get good coverage, and they come in from, especially this time of year, they come in from miles around. I mean, so you're always, going to be inundated possibly with these grasshoppers.
So endure as much as you can grasshopper activity in lawn and garden. Now, a couple of other pests we have yet to address this growing season. Cabbage loopers. What's the story on those, Ray?
Yeah, I usually visit the Manhattan Community Garden to update Chuck Marr, a retired vegetable specialist, and they're feeding on cabbage, anything in the cabbage, that family, and they're bright green, and they can really devastate cabbage.
These are worms?
These are worms, yeah, caterpillars. Mm-hmm. And so, just like bagworms, the BT, spinosad or things like that, sprayed now will be very effective. And of course, they're on the leaf undersides a lot, so you have to get good coverage. But yeah, they're pretty heavy right now, and I've seen various sizes actually on cabbage plants.
Mm-hmm. They are obviously damaging the harvestable product.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's why you have to get on top of those aggressively.
That is right.
And the Colorado potato beetle. Strictly on potatoes or on other vegetables too?
Pretty much on potatoes, but the larvae are out, the adults are out, and they can devastate a potato crop if you're not on top of it. And unfortunately, we don't really have any selective materials. I mean, people are spraying 7 and malathion and orthene a little bit in the pyrethroids. Some people go out there and handpick them, and it really depends on what works best for you. But if you don't do anything, they can devastate a potato crop within a short period of time.
And what distinguishes this beetle? What does it look like?
Okay, the larvae are kind of plump. They are grayer, reddish, and they have black spots on both sides of the body. They look like slugs. And the adults are elliptical, and they're kind of yellowish orange, but they have stripes down their abdomen, which is the cover. And if you have any questions, if you collect one, you can always send it to the Extension office, and we'll do our best to identify it.
Well, once again, thanks for the word on all of these pests, likely active in lawn and garden to some extent, and we'll talk again soon, Raymond.
Look forward to it, Eric. Thank you.
Raymond Cloyd, horticultural entomologist, K-State Research and Extension, along with this once more for the weekly K-State Horticulture segment. That caps off today's edition. On tomorrow's broadcast, back in will be K-State grain market economist Dan O'Brien with his latest observations on the grain price trends to the moment. And once more, we'll have another Kansas wheat harvest update for you. So please tune back in right here tomorrow, won't you? Meantime, Eric Atkinson bidding you a good day for Agriculture Today. This is the K-State Radio Network.